But it wasn't until 2002 that the Clements Library created a new division for the pictorial collections. In January of that year, we inaugurated the graphics division by bringing our first, and to date our last, graphics curator, Clayton Lewis, on board. Clayton came to the library with a background in graphic design and with estimable abilities as photographer, art historian, artists, and a variety of related fields. He is well known to many of you for his wide-ranging efforts on behalf of the library during the past dozen years, and for his extraordinary results in making the graphics division a magnet for collectors, students, and scholars alike. On Clayton's watch, the library has added more than $1 million in purchased material to the graphics division and somewhere north of $3 million in donated materials to the graphics division. The result is that graphics is now a full partner at the Clements in the library's collections. It is the fastest growing collecting division we have, and it is becoming as well known nationally as its Clements map, book, and manuscript counterparts. Much of that credit goes to Clayton, and thus it now gives me considerable pleasure to ask you to join me in welcoming Clayton Lewis to the podium.
Thank you, Kevin. That was very kind. I appreciate that very much. And thank you to all the many people that have made the graphics division what it is. It certainly isn't about me. And I look out on this room today and I see a lot of the people that have contributed so much to this project. But today we're here to talk about one person in particular, our good friend Dave Tinder. And he is a remarkable collector, a remarkable scholar of Michigan photographic history, and we're here to honor Dave for his willingness to share his vast knowledge and his enormous collection with the rest of us, and to recognize him as a great friend and associate. Dave's contribution to scholarship on Michigan history has already been significant, and it will expand over time in ways that I don't think any of us can really anticipate, and maybe that's part of the fun of this job. But his contribution comes really in two main parts. One part is the collection of photographs that he's amassed over the years, and the other part is his remarkable directory of early Michigan photographers. And we'll be taking a peek at both of these during today's presentations. But I'd like to start by recognizing the contributions of many other people involved in making all these resources available. The acquisition, processing, cataloging that has gone on into getting the collection this far has been a team effort, and it's included a large group of volunteers, work-study students, summer interns, as well as regular paid library staff members. The volunteers include Joel Hickey, Les High, Francine Keys, William Lewis, Megan Marion, Jim Theory, and Michael Wessenberg. And most of these people are here with us today. Our work-study crew has included Jorge Lopez McKnight, Eve Niger, May Euler, and Sarah Walsh. We've had interns and temporary staff that have included Jorge Lopez McKnight, Lori Mott, Marjorie O'Brien, and Jane Ptolemy. Essential help has come from the Clements Manuscript Division staff, particularly Curator Cheney Chopre and Project Archivist Meg Hickson. So the graphics division, it isn't about me. It's been a big push from many, many people. The University of Michigan's online finding aids, which I will show you some samples of today, are developed and hosted by the Digital Library Production Service here at the Michigan Library. Coordinator of Encoded Text Services, Chris Powell, has been instrumental in getting the first finding aids for the Tinder collection online and fully functioning, and she has been all around a wonderful person to work with in the past few weeks, and has always been very responsive to my inquiries and stupid questions. Thank you, Chris. And I think it's also important to note that this project has enjoyed the enthusiastic endorsement of Clements Library directors Kevin Graffinino, and then prior to Kevin, John Dan. Thank you, all of you. We're also very grateful for the support coming from the Michigan Photographic Historical Society. This organization is for anyone that is interested in photography. Is there anyone here that's not interested in photography? You're in the wrong room if you are. But if you're interested in photography as a photographer, as a historian, as a collector, the Michigan Photographic Historical Society has something for you. This organization has sponsored 3 summer internships at the Clements Library to assist with the processing of the collection. The organization also assembled a team of proofreaders to proofread the enormous 2,800-page Tinder directory. The Clements became aware of Dave Tinder and his collection and his research project in about 2001 through our Clements Library Associates board member, Dave Walters. We were bowled over by the research potential that we saw in this collection, and we immediately became interested in acquiring it intact, if at all possible, and supporting the publication of Dave's directory. We were not able to make this acquisition without a significant sponsor, and fortunately, we had one in Dave Walters. Dave is a creative thinker who bridges the worlds of collectors and archives, and the acquisition is an interesting story all of its own, but to keep it brief, a deal was struck whereby Dave Walters took ownership of the entire Tinder collection at that point and agreed to donate it incrementally to the Clements Library, which he's been doing for the past few years, and I expect will continue to do so for a few more. It is important for us to note that this donation is made in honor of Dave Walters' parents, Harold L. Walters, University of Michigan class of 1947 in engineering, and Marilyn S. Walters, University of Michigan class of 1950, LSA. Subsequently, there have been other donors to the collection. They include Elaine Cato, Larry Filipchik, Donald Harrison, Andrew and Jill Kirchhoff, Cynthia Kirchhoff, David and Laurel Kovacs, Daisy Levain, Peter and Cynthia Matzenbecker, Keith and Angela Stefke, David E. and Joanne Tinder, and David V. Tinder himself. I'm delighted that so many of these donors, volunteers, employees, and friends are all here today. Would you please join me in showing appreciation to the efforts that they have all given? Just as it's been a team effort to bring this collection and this project to the University of Michigan, it'll be a team effort to pay tribute to Dave Tinder, the remarkable man. So among Dave's many friends and admirers are Len Wally and Cynthia Matzenbecker, and it's my honor to introduce them. Cindy, you get to go first. Cindy is a longtime friend of the library, a close friend of Dave Tinder's, and a willing co-conspirator in the collecting of interesting photographic images. Cindy and Dave have swapped pictures, shared information, and generally encouraged each other's habit for a long time. Cindy is president of the Michigan Photographic Historical Society, the organization that has actively supported the processing of the Tinder collection and the editing and proofreading of the Tinder directory. Cindy Matzenbecker.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Clayton, and everybody for coming. And I'm going to read this because I don't want to flub it up. So, okay, thank you to everyone for coming here today for Dave's coming out party. We're here because we love history or Dave Tinder or both. I'd like to also thank the Michigan Photographic, I'm going to say Hysterical Society, board and members for helping to support this amazing accomplishment. I first heard of Dave Tinder at a flea market over 30 years ago from his friend Tom Ross, a dirigible photo collector, when I was selling a photo album of Michigan images. His name kept cropping up in various places over the years. It was 3 years before I finally ran into him at the flea market at historic Fort Wayne. But let's see, it might have been 30 years ago, okay? I was considering collecting Michigan images, but found that Dave was already doing that. Since then, I've become his picker, turning over just about everything Michigan related. We used to keep score, but it's a moot point after all these years. I do save the better items for Christmas and his birthday, which are very close together. So, okay, there are many collectors in this room. Our collecting habits are affected by the collectors and the people we meet on the way. They alert us to things our eyes and minds have passed over or aren't aware of. I've learned from Len Wally that a person should buy the best they can afford, though I still tend to be a rescue mission, saving historically valuable images from rough handling or photos left in the sun sealed in a damp plastic bag. All you curators, cover your ears. You'd be amazed at what spit in a tissue can remove to reveal a stunning image. The things I've learned from Dave. Lots of genre photography comes from the secondhand world. The days of just buying a box of $25 images is gone. Snapshots can now start at $1 a pop, useless or not. The flea market is a place where a lot of people that don't fit into the 9-to-5 job market can make a living. It can be a rough crowd, and a lot will depend on your reputation, paying on time, and general attitude. Once you get established and can roll with the early morning hours, dealers will save things for you because they know your checks are good. Cash is king. You had better go to your guy first thing if you don't want an item or the box of photos. They then have the rest of the day to peddle it. Otherwise, I couldn't say I've ever gotten to know a repo man from Pontiac that looked like a member of ZZ Top, beard and all. You can learn to look a tall, tattooed man in the eye with beads in his beard and ask for a better price. It's not for the timid. There's also the small world of estate sales. Here's where the early bird really gets the worm. You get to know which dealers are weasels as you do the customers. There are lots of shenanigans that can go on behind the scenes. To my surprise, I've even run into Dave Walters with a lower entry number than I had for a sale in Birmingham. That means he was very early. It was a lovely old post-Civil War era house with a lot of original furnishing and all the original woodwork. There was a moneyed woman just going on and on to anyone who would listen about how they should just tear the house down. I couldn't believe my ears. It was all I could do not to choke her for her naive comments. Another wonderful story from a flea market 2 weeks ago where I picked up a nice haul for Dave was an older man in a straw hat that was following the same pattern I was traveling through the show. He saw me rifling through piles of paper, and he asked me if I was looking for trade cards. I said, no, photos. He smiled and he said he collects trade cards and he was going to donate them to the Clements Library. Do you know about the Clements Library? And my response was, matter of fact, I do. Was he pleased? Turns out Jerry's research collection, Jerry, wave your hand. He's a flea market bum too. Jerry's research collection of 400 cards is coming to the Clements also. I spoke about this fortuitous meeting to a friend who sat up there. She knew of him, as did her business partner, who was a good friend of his too. Are we an inbred crowd or what? We history nerds must stick together. Okay, Dave has taught many about patience, persistence, and objectivity. He's well connected in many aspects of history, be it the railroad fellas, the ship guys, or the Civil War crowd. There's also the UP mine folks, the stereo crowd, and the photo postcard people. It goes on, including decent places to eat around town. If he thought about it, he might even be in awe of himself. He doesn't let it go to his head. Dave knows how to listen, too. Might be tough for him in a crowd of chattering women, though, let alone get a word in edgewise. But no matter what, we stand in awe of Dave's extremely time-consuming accomplishments. It's a wonderful thing to be able to call him a friend. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Cindy. So Len Wally is also a collector and a scholar of photographic history and the history of astronomy, with a particular interest in the overlap between science, art, and photography in the 19th century. Len is on the board of the Clements Library Associates and the Michigan Photographic Historical Society. Len has also traded pictures and information with Dave for many years and has played an important role in the formation of the Tinder collection and the production of Dave's directory. The Clements and the Michigan photographic community have all benefited from Len's wisdom and judgment over the years. Please welcome Len Wally.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to help celebrate Dave Tinder and his collection of Michigan photography. It's an honor and a privilege. When Clayton asked me to say a few words, I started thinking back when I first met Dave. I was a very young collector, just starting out, and I heard through the grapevine, as best as I can recall, in the early 70s, probably 73, 74, about someone by the name of Dave Tinder, who had a large collection of early stereo photographs that might be available. And that led to meeting Dave and visiting Dave at his apartment in Madison Heights, which is a suburb of northern Detroit. And for those of you who are not familiar with stereo, and I know that for me it was a real discovery, a stereo photograph is taken with a camera, typically with two lenses. The lenses are separated by the distance of your eyes, and these photographs are mounted on a card, and when you view them in a viewer, you see the object in 3 dimensions compared to 2 dimensions with a normal photograph. And the beauty of stereo is that it puts you in the view. You're not looking at it, you're in it. And the information that you receive, the visual information, is dramatically different from the information you see by looking at a 2-dimensional object. Anyway, it was a real eye-opener because when I visited Dave, I had never seen so many stereo views in my life. I had early on found a book by William Culp Darrow that was published in 1964, which is the Bible for stereo collectors. And I had read about these views and dreamed about them. And then I visited Dave, and it was unbelievable. Moving on. At the time when I met Dave, he acknowledged that indeed he might be open to an offer for the views. But in going through the collection, which contained a significant number of Michigan views, I also found research notes on various photographers. And the real dilemma for me was, how do you value this type of a collection? I did not want to offend this new person I met, and I really didn't know where to go. But I knew a serious dealer and photo historian by the name of John Craig. And John is known for the Daguerrean Directory. John's no longer with us. But I asked John, and I told John about Dave's collection. And while he was listening to my description, his response was, "Len, the collection may be significant in your eyes, but the real value is in the research." So I went back to Dave, and I relayed to Dave John's comments. And to some degree, I think that caught his attention. And also, in showing me his collection, I think, which contained a lot of Michigan material, I believe, or at least I would like to believe, that his interest may have been rekindled. Because afterwards, Dave began collecting Michigan photographs with a passion that continues to this day, amassing an unbelievable collection of Michigan photo history. His dedication and his discipline have been extraordinary. However, as John Craig concluded many years ago, it is Dave's research that truly makes the collection stand out. And most important, on a personal basis, is the friendship that developed between us since that first meeting. It is something that has enriched my knowledge and appreciation not only for photography, but also fine art. Because when I met Dave, he not only had a photography collection, he had a collection of Art Nouveau. He had a collection of Japanese art. He had a collection of pottery. He had what I later learned were called tsubas, which were the guards on Japanese samurai swords that are beautiful. He was a Renaissance man who I met that first meeting. And furthermore, it was Dave who introduced my wife Jean to Pewabic pottery, but that's another story. Before closing, I would like to thank and recognize David Walters for creating the means for bringing the Dave Tinder collection to the Clements Library, and I would like to thank the Clements Library for the support with embracing the David V. Tinder collection of Michigan photography. Thank you.
So the fun part is coming up. I've got a slideshow that is a lot of highlights from the Tinder collection. But before I get to that, I'd like to take care of a little bit of business and show you how you can, through the online finding aids, find out some detailed information about what the collection is, and also how to access the Dave Tinder Directory of Early Michigan Photographers online. So I will open up a browser here on the laptop. You can start by just searching for the Clements Library and go to our website. And it looks like this on the main page, and there's a little yellow button up at the top that says search. And if you go to that, it takes us to a page where you can search the collections in many different ways. But note there is a link that didn't used to be there. It says Graphics Division Finding Aids over here. It'll appear over here. And it's these links here that take you to this page where you can search the textual descriptions of the Graphics Division Finding Aids. At this point, behind this is nothing but Dave Tinder, but that's okay. I would highly recommend, if you're doing keyword searches, use the advanced search mode, which allows you to search multiple fields at the same time. By placing individual words in the individual fields, it'll give you a much more sophisticated results list than searching together in this field. Or you can also browse, and this will take you to a list of the finding aids. And they look kind of like this. The complexity of the Dave Tinder collection and the size of it and the many different subjects that are represented have been a challenge for us that we hope we have solved by multiple finding aids for different parts of the collection. The collection is sorted by photographic format, and then within those orders, sorted either geographically in some cases, alphabetically by photographer in other cases, depending on the format and how we anticipate it might be used for research, and also to a large degree dependent on the organization of the collection as we've gotten it from Dave Tinder himself. This group of individual finding aids for different segments of the collection are all under the umbrella of one finding aid, which is this one at the top of the list. And if we follow the links, you get this. You get a page that's like a little website describing the Tinder collection. There's a brief abstract describing of what is in here in very brief terms, the summary information. There is a page, a link to a page for access and use. This describes where the collection came from. It honors the Photo Historical Society that helped fund the cataloging, and our donor, Mr. Walters, in honor of his parents. There is a biography page that has a brief biography of the collector Dave Tinder and describing why it is that this is at the University of Michigan Clements Library. And then it gets down to the fun part, the arrangement. And this is an outline in approximate terms of how the collection is arranged by cased images, cartes de visite and card photographs, stereographs. Each of these different series is a subset of the Tinder collection and will have its own finding aid. The contents list here contains active links to the other subset finding aids that are available. Right at the center is what Dave always called the county file. We're still calling it the county file. And these are large format, medium format, mounted prints, unmounted prints, sorted by Michigan County. And they contain a lot of great visual information of all kinds. It's views of places, it's historic events, it's portraits, it's many, many different things. Let's just take a look at one here. I like Benzie County. Let's go to Benzie County. This takes us again to a page with summary information, a brief scope and contents note that mentions that there's some pictures of Benzie County here, and then a contents list, and this is where the detail starts to become item level. With a brief description of what the photos in the county file for Benzie County are and how many there are. From this, you can sit in the reading room of the Clements Library, fill out a call slip and say, I'd like this box of Benzie County from the county file, please, and we'll fetch it. There is a page of subject terms. These are Library of Congress subject terms, and this is essentially a dragnet. This is the material, the words that will come up in keyword searches. So if somebody is interested in Frankfort, Michigan, and does a search, they'll stumble across this, even if they don't know that the Tinder collection exists. At the bottom of each of these pages, each of these finding aids has a link at the bottom, additional descriptive data. And what this contains is a link that takes you back to the top, back to the main finding aid, back to the beginning where we were. But each of these also contains another link. And this is the link to the Tinder directory. And if you click on this, it may take a few moments to load. This is a pretty big file. It's over 2,800 pages. It's a document in PDF form. You can download it to your own computer if you want, or you can search it through your web browser. I would recommend clicking on it and downloading it to your computer and opening it up there. And this will allow you to use a bookmarks pane, which is built into it, that allows you to jump around the directory. There's an introduction that was written by myself. There's a user's guide that describes the contents of the directory and some ideas about how to approach it. The directory is structured in two big pieces. One of them is a directory by Michigan community with lists of photographers in chronological order as they appeared in that community. For example, in Adrian, Michigan, we can see that it was in 1850 that photography first appeared. Mr. G.W. Merrick went into business there. This is, if you have a photograph of a particular place and you're groping to identify a photographer that may have taken it, this is a very useful tool. The next part of the directory is alphabetical by photographer, and this is where the most detailed information of Dave Tinder's research is, and it's amazing. Some of the entries, as you can see, are very brief because that's all the known information. Some of them go on for several pages, but Dave has made a point of tracking the careers of these individuals, as many of them have gone in and out of the photographic business, have participated in other trades, and have crossed state lines and done photography elsewhere. We can see Lewis C. Abbey here, started out in Cleveland, Ohio, is active in White Pigeon, ended up in Kalamazoo. Over the column in the right are codes that refer to the source notes, which appear at the bottom. At the end of the directory, there are some appendices. There's another page with information about sources, and then there's also a glossary of photographic terms for those that may not be familiar with the language. There's a couple of ways to find this directory. We have it linked to our finding aids. We also have it linked to the Clements Library website and a couple other places as well. I'm going to back up here. If you go to our publications page off the main page of the Clements website, we have a bookstore, and you'll notice there's a new item on the list at the bookstore. It's the Directory of Early Michigan Photographers, and it's a free download. Thank you, Mr. Tinder, and you can click on this link and download it to your computer. And I think Dave is to be commended for making so much of his personal time and research and effort available to all of us to expand our knowledge and our understanding of what photographic history really means. It's the most remarkable resource. I've never really seen anything like it. There are other directories of photographers. None as detailed and as broad as the Tinder directory. There are other large photographic collections. I can't think of an example of a directory and a photo collection put together in the same resource. And thank you, Dave, for making it possible for us to do this. Okay. Shall we look at some pictures? Wrong button. This one. Here we are. So, as Kevin mentioned, there were photos in the Clements Library before there was a graphics division and before we knew about the Tinder collection. A lot of them were related to the manuscripts division, like this marvelous Matthew Brady daguerreotype of William Whittemore. There's a Whittemore Low manuscripts collection that came with about 100 photographs, and some of our real prize items are directly related to the manuscript collection. And this is the beginning of photographic history at the Clements Library. It was a wing of the manuscripts division. In the 60s and 70s, we acquired the James Schoaf Civil War collection, which is primarily a collection of soldiers' journals and letters, but it came with some very significant photographs as well. An album of card-mounted prints by Matthew Brady and his crew, like this example, came with the James Schoaf collection. Other collections that we picked up along the way included an autograph collection by Detroit Mayor William Brearley that contains well over 100 autograph photos in an album, most of them in carte de visite format, like these two remarkable autographs from the 19th century. And then the one that kind of gave us a critical mass was the donation of the Fred Currier collection. Some of you probably knew Fred Currier. And when that came to the Clements Library, this very broad collection of photographic history and art photography kind of put us on the map as having a collection that a historian might go out of his way to see. This is a photo by Timothy O'Sullivan, who was on board one of the early Western Survey expeditions as a government photographer. And then more recently, we acquired the Mark Anderson collection of postmortem photography. It was not a big collection. It was about 600 items, but it gave us a critical mass on a single subject that we didn't have before. This photograph is by James Black of Boston, a remarkably beautiful picture. But the Tinder collection has multiplied the dimensions of the photo collection at the Clements in every way. In approximate terms, it's well over 100,000 images total. Not all of it is open for research at this point, but we're working on that. But what we have at the library and we can get our hands on, we can put in front of you in the reading room, and you too can have access to this material. As far as samples of what the collection contains, it's very hard to know where to begin. There's so many important and great examples, but I like this one. I think it's important because of the photographer that took it. It's not the most famous, the rarest, or the earliest, but it's a significant picture. This is Marquette, and the harbor in Marquette, Michigan. The photographer Bernard Childs was a very prolific early photographer of the Lake Superior region, and I like this example because there are so many things going on in this picture. For starters, we have the ore dock. Early photographers were professionals they were in it for the money, and they went where the money was. And in Michigan history, a lot of the wealth was up north in the 19th century, the iron, the copper, and the lumbering industries. And Childs was one who followed the mining of the north. The ore dock is where the transfer between the railroad that pulled the ore out of the mines and the shipping that would take it down the lake to the industrial centers like Cleveland and Detroit would take place. In an enlargement, you can see that one of these boats is riding high and is empty. The other one is down pretty low and has just been filled up. From the angle of the shadows, you could tell that this is taken late in the afternoon. If that cannon is pointing due east, which I think it is, the angle of the sun would tell you that this is probably past the equinox and getting late in the shipping season. I don't think it would be early in the year, like March, because there would be ice in the harbor. So I'm thinking this is October, early November when this was taken. And then, of course, some of you know this is a special photo because it's also a self-portrait of the photographer, if you can see his shadow and his box camera in the foreground. But this is a nice example of how much information I think you can extract from one image and what value it might have for a historian. One of the great photographers of the lumber business, James Jenney, took this stereo view, and it wasn't until I put it in the viewer and looked at it magnified that I noticed that in addition to showing the scale of the lumbering operations as they took place in northern Michigan, it also gave us a sense of the impact that this business would have on communities when I noticed there was a family with a very small child up there on top of that lumber pile that I hadn't seen before. I just happened to have a thing about barn raisings, and it's not something I thought much about until going through the Tinder collection, and I realized there's well over 100 photos like this of barn raisings, and they all seem to represent a community gathered together focused on a single activity. This one was taken near Dexter. And there's at least 18 people in this picture. There's a baby in a stroller, and there's 2 American flags. And I have to believe this was maybe a July 4th weekend barn raising. A detail of that same photo. One of the things that interests me about the history of photography is how intertwined photography became with people's lives more than any other visual media. And that's still true today. You know, we all walk around with cameras in our pockets now. But from the very get-go, the photographic media became part of the way people describe themselves, like in this early daguerreotype taken in the 1850s, where the woman in the photograph is using the media of photography to tell us something a little bit about her, that she has a relationship with this other young woman who's present in the photograph within the photo. For certain segments of society, photography represented an opportunity to portray themselves differently. For African Americans of the 19th century, it was a chance to portray themselves in a way that was not derogatory, it was not a cartoon, and was a chance for them to participate as full citizens in a society that was full of derogatory images of black people. This one taken in Detroit with what looks like a brand new Ford V8 car, I think is a wonderful statement of citizenship and place in society through photography. Other segments of our society had a different relationship with photography. With Native Americans, it was always very tense. They were a people who were suspicious of the power of photographic images. And in this portrait, the subject has surrounded himself with his trappings of authority and power in his way maybe to guard against the photo that was being taken. The great prizes of Dave's collection, I think in Dave's eyes, would be the photos of the photography business itself. And these are self-portraits of photographers, pictures of photographers at work, pictures of their studios, their businesses, how they conducted their lives. And the earliest of them is this self-portrait by Mr. John Hogue from Lansing, Michigan, who is letting us know he is a daguerrean artist, and it's 1849. And this is a remarkable, wonderful picture. by the 1880s, photography had become quite a bit more casual and was less formal. And this, I presume, a self-portrait by Mr. Blair in Hopkins Station indicates that. He's having fun with his child in the studio as a self-promotional picture. And here, the studio of William Briley in Flushing is a combination of a home and a business, and you can see with the large skylight that is on the side of the building, likely facing north, is where the photo studio would be. And then if you look carefully on the first floor outside wall, there's a display case with sample photographic images for those potential customers walking down the sidewalk. This is also the home and business of a photographer, but Wallace Nutting operated out of a tent, and he was one of many itinerant photographers that traveled the state town to town in the 19th and early 20th century as a traveling photographer. One of the photographers who is best documented in the collection is this gentleman, Royal Gillette, who ran the Royal Photo Company out of Grand Rapids in the early 20th century. And Dave has a remarkable set of pictures of Royal, his crew, his equipment, including wonderful behind-the-scenes pictures of his photographic gallery. This one I love. It looks like it's the cutting room where the women are cutting and mounting paper photographic prints onto cardboard. The gentleman on the left of the screen has got a clipboard and maybe a ledger sheet, and he's being assisted by a white fluffy kitten, which I hadn't noticed before until I had put the slide up. And then that's Royal Gillette himself with the cigar on the right. And although you can't see his right hand, I'm pretty sure he's holding the squeeze bulb for the camera that took this picture, and that's the pneumatic tube running across the tabletop on the right to the camera that snapped this picture. These students from what would become Ferris State were in a world of photographs. They've got photos on the wall, photo albums on the table, photos out in front of the mirror, and if you look carefully in the mirror, it is also a self-portrait with a photographer with what looks like a Kodak postcard-style camera and himself in the picture. This is a favorite of both Dave and myself. It's the studio from Lansing of Mr. Leavenworth, and the note on this, as you can see, is from, I believe, his wife, is Mildred, his wife, who's describing that this is their new gallery in Boyne, Michigan. Leavenworth would go on to Lansing to become one of the most successful photographers in Lansing in his day. Again, there's a sample box on the street with examples of his work, and you can see the skylight built into the side of the building where the shooting would take place inside. When you have a nice photo, it's a beautiful individual object, but there's something to be said for the numbers. Dave Tinder has always been a collector to the critical mass theory. You know, if one is good, 10 is better, and if you've got 100, then the meaning starts to emerge. There are hundreds of photographs of people with bicycles in the Tinder collection, and you know, one of them is nice. The gentleman on the left is wearing a hat that indicates he's a member of the Detroit Wheelmen, a cycling club that still goes, and that's interesting. The woman on the right is dressed for cycling. Women embraced bicycling in the late 19th century as a chance for some physical freedom that maybe they didn't otherwise have. But when you can compare these two nice pictures to hundreds of other similar ones, meanings and patterns start to emerge that you wouldn't otherwise see. And this is the real power of the Tinder collection. There are these great individual items, but there's also the critical mass that opens up new worlds. There's a lot of pictures of camping. I think this one's my favorite. I don't know if you can read the sign on the tree, but it says, "We're a happy family." And although they don't look like they're having that much fun, particularly not the small boy on the left, who does not at all seem pleased about the way he's been dressed for camping. But there's a shaving mirror on the tree. There's a table set for dinner. The details of how one went camping back in the day are wonderfully described in this image. There's a nice series from a wonderful photographer named Schuyler Baldwin. Baldwin worked in western Michigan in Kent County, and he did a series of pictures of the Battle Creek Sanitarium, which is here in stereo. This is the interior of the gymnasium. This was a health resort of sorts, where through diet and exercise you would become a better, stronger, more serene person. And the program also included electrobath therapy. And this remarkable picture is a demonstration of that process. And I don't know what that is in the foreground. It's a generator of some sort connected to the bath in the background, but I wouldn't go near it. But this was part of the routine at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. And I have to believe most of the wires and knobs and controls are there just for show, but the electric current that ran through the water, I'm sure, was real. We have some guests from Midland, Michigan here, I know. This is taken on the Tittabawassee River at Midland in 1898. It was a celebration of the success in the Spanish-American War, and it's a recreation of the siege of Santiago, Chile, that included some plywood and cardboard replicas of the U.S. Navy in the foreground. And if you look on the bank of the river, that is a replica of Morro Castle that's been built. And the children that are on these vessels look absolutely like this is the greatest day of their lives. And I'm sure there were fireworks involved. And this is one of a series of pictures, all with the title of Sham Battle on the Tittabawassee River. And I've never seen anything like it. Another critical mass moment within the Tinder collection are photographs of school children. There's hundreds and hundreds of them in urban areas, rural areas, from all eras and all types, and none, although there are patterns in how they are taken, there are so many differences that I think there's wonderful stories to be told. Like this group here in their one-room schoolhouse, my guess is that they were told by the photographer to take their hats off, and they all took their hats off and threw them down on the ground in the foreground. And it's always interesting to notice how many barefoot kids there are, how many different ages there are. There's almost always a pretty girl and a tough guy and a class clown, easily identifiable in these pictures. This one is from an urban area. I'm sorry, I can't remember the city that this one was taken in. And then from Detroit, the picture is an expression of what level of discipline you could probably expect from the school. Or this rare school group actually looks happy, and it's probably because they have a dog. Dave and I both have a love for this one. When I was in elementary school, they frowned upon kids on the roof and out open windows. But in the 19th century, this is in St. Clair County, apparently it was kid heaven. Kevin and I were talking the other day about whether this is a football team or a baseball team photo, and I think he's right that this is, because of the padded pants, it's likely a football team here. Can anybody tell me which Michigan community this team is from, based on their uniforms? Any guesses? And it's not Ypsilanti. Somebody's got it. Wyandotte. Detroit being, of course, the great metropolitan area of Michigan, features prominently in the Tinder collection, and the images of old Detroit show you what a fantastic lifestyle there was living in Detroit in the 19th century. This is Grand Circus Park in a stereo view, and it's got the serenity and the calm and the rich lifestyle that Detroit so lacks today. The lumbering business features prominently, of course, in the Tinder collection. This is from a series of beautifully composed photos taken in Alcona County on the Black River of a lumbering operation that seems to have specialized in long cut lumbering. And each of the photos has been carefully composed by an unidentified photographer, but they're just beautiful prints. And this one I particularly like, of a foreman's cabin with his pretty wife, the X in the foreground, the downspout that's nothing more than a plank into the rain barrel. There are also some examples of technical wonder. This is a cut and paste job to produce this fantastic composite photo of the Detroit Fire Department in the 1890s. Each one of these photos was taken individually, cut out, pasted together, and rephotographed along with some decorative artwork in an amazing, carefully measured pattern. It's almost like op art. And if the intent was to present the fire department as a unified force, I think the photographer succeeded. There's Muskegon. There's things to be learned that you don't know through the photo collection. I didn't know there was a streetcar riot in Muskegon until I saw the photos in the Tinder collection. The fare was raised, I think, from 6 cents to 7 and triggered an uprising. The citizenry, I believe, egged on some teenage boys to do most of the damage by ramming streetcars into each other. But the photos are devastating. One of the most famous boats on the Great Lakes, the Tajmu, was a pleasure steamer that ran from Detroit to an amusement park, Tajmu Park, and also down to Put-in Bay. And it's a well-documented vessel. There's a lot of drawings and pictures of the Tajmu, but this one I think is the best I've ever seen because it captures the feeling of being on the water at speed on a warm summer day with a crowd of people with the wind in your face, and there is nothing quite like it. And that's why I love this picture so much. Another example of how much can be found in the details, this ambrotype taken in Pontiac, Michigan, of a storefront, in addition to showing us the business, shows us how the trees were protected from the nibbling horses by putting a plank siding around the bases of them. You get a sense of the advertising that the communities used for their businesses with the hand-painted ad on the plank fence next to it. And either they just cleaned the sidewalks or it was taken right after a rainstorm, but I don't know which. But the wood plank sidewalks look freshly damped and cleaned. And here's one from Ann Arbor. This mill stood, Whiston, I believe this is the one that was on Broadway, is that correct? Near the river, the Sinclair Mill. There were a couple of mills on this site. I think they all burned too, but this one was not the first in the middle, in the late 19th century. And if you look over on the left, you can see what I think is the wood bridge across the river, like where the Broadway Bridge is currently. Another Ann Arbor picture. This is the campus of the University of Michigan. Back when the groundskeeping wasn't nearly as carefully done as it is today. And I love the pile of furniture that's outside the building. I think this must have been at the end of the semester, and they've got all the desks and chairs thrown out the window into a heaping pile. And this one is quite well known. One of the earlier pictures of the University of Michigan campus in Ann Arbor. This is the Detroit Observatory as it appeared in about 1859, shortly after its construction. So I could go on and on and on for a long time, but I want to give everyone here a chance to mingle and talk, and I also like to give a chance for Mr. Dave Tinder to say a few words himself. He has asked for the opportunity to say a few things, but I'd like to thank you very much for your coming out and your support. And please look at the finding aids online. If this is something that interests you greatly, you can come to the Clements Library. You can register with us to be a researcher. You can fill out the call slips and request these materials and work one-on-one with this great photographic collection. Thank you very much. Mr. Dave Tinder.
My friendships with the staff of the Clements Library and with all of you have enriched my life greatly. My relationship with the library has enhanced my view of both the near and the distant future. Thank you all for coming, sharing this with me.